Today's episode is supported by AIDS-Free Pittsburgh. There are more than 5,000 people living with HIV in southwestern Pennsylvania, and the Ryan White HIV/AIDS program provides support services to help them get the care they need. That includes assistance with things like healthcare, medications, housing, transportation, food, and treatment for substance use disorders. Visit aidsfreepittsburgh.org to learn more.
Today's show is supported by TaskRabbit. You know, as Pittsburghers, we have a strong work ethic, but sometimes we all need a little bit of help. If you're looking for someone to help you assemble some furniture, maybe start a home repair, TaskRabbit is here for you. You just download the TaskRabbit app, describe what you need, and you'll get matched with a skilled tasker. Maybe even one of your neighbors. It could be a great way to meet people. They'll pitch in, and there are no surprises because pricing is right there before you book. Download the TaskRabbit app or visit taskrabbit.com today to get those home to-dos crossed off.
This is Your City Could Be Better, because it could be. I'm David Plotz. If you love your city and still complain about it, you're in the right place. I'm an old person, and I've lived in cities for a really long time, and that means it's pretty rare that there's some kind of city policy or urban experiment that I've literally never heard of before. And that is why I am so excited to talk about democracy vouchers. Since 2015, the city of Seattle, unlike any other jurisdiction that I know of in the U.S., has given $100 in vouchers to every voter that the voter can then donate to the candidate of their choice in municipal elections. Basically, you can become a political donor without spending any of your own money and, in fact, spending the city's money, the city's tax money. I guess it is your own money because you probably paid those taxes. Today, I'm talking to Jane Zihu, the host of CityCast Seattle. And the question on the table is, would your city be better if it gave money to voters to donate to political candidates? Jane Zihu, welcome to Your City Could Be Better.
Thanks for having me, David.
So, Jane, how did this idea get started? When did it get started? How did it come to be?
Okay, so the idea of democracy vouchers was actually proposed in the 90s by a Yale law professor named Bruce Ackerman. He had
Bruce
the idea...
Ackerman?
Oh, do you know Bruce?
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I know him, but I know his reputationally.
Our old bud, Bruce. So he had the idea to give American voters $10 in Patriot credit cards to donate to federal campaigns. So this idea kind of just was in the ether for a while. And then the legal scholar Lawrence Lessig popularized it in 2011. He wrote this book about it and a New York Times op-ed, which did big numbers. And he was proposing $50 in vouchers. And this information all made its way to some Seattle organizers in this moment where they were really trying to recover from losing this referendum on getting public matching programs going in Seattle. That was in 2013. They had proposed this whole thing where the government would match contributions up to $50, but it lost by like a sliver, like 1,400 votes. So the main group that was leading that effort heard about Lessig's work, and they decided to poll Seattleites on whether people here would be interested in doing something like a democracy voucher. It seemed pretty popular. They put it on the ballot for 2015 under the initiative called Honest Elections Seattle, and 63% of voters voted in favor of it, and that has been around ever since. We actually voted to renew this program back in August 2025.
So, okay. So how does it work? What do the vouchers look like? Do you get them? Are there physical vouchers? How do you spend them? Who can you spend them on?
Yeah. Okay. So you get physical vouchers to start. At least when the program first launched, you get a little piece of paper. It has 4 little rectangles that are perforated. They kind of just look like, an old school gift certificate almost. And if you want, you can return them to the campaign of the person that you want to give them to. You can also return them directly to the Seattle Ethics and Elections Commission. One innovation that they've made since they first launched this program is you can now register online to just get your democracy vouchers there. And it seems like the people who do it that way are actually more likely to turn them in because you don't have to faff about with figuring out how to get this piece of paper back to where it needs to go. But You typically get them at the beginning of the year. Like, I think they're usually released in like February or March. And it depends a little on what elections are happening. Like, it has to be a city office, obviously. And some years there are only some people in some districts who get them. So for instance, this year here in Seattle, there's a District 5 seat open. And so those folks are getting $50, but the rest of the city, I don't believe, gets anything.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then you write on the voucher, or when you go online, you designate, I want it to go to this candidate. And could you put your own name on it? Could be like, it could go to Jane See Who, even though you're not running for office, or it has to be a registered candidate for office?
So it has to be a registered candidate. So candidates have to go through a system of basically opting into this program. And part of that is actually receiving enough donations from individual people of at least $10 in order to be eligible to receive the democracy vouchers. And there are all a bunch of other requirements too, depending on which office that you're running for, in terms of like how much you can accept from an individual person, like keeping your total campaign spending under certain amounts, that you have to participate in public debates. So there is a little bit of a vetting process before you're eligible to actually receive the vouchers.
Participate in public debates that's a good qualification. That's a good requirement.
I think it's that you have to do at least 3 of them, which is kind of cool, I think.
And where does the money come from for this?
So this is from property taxes. So it's paid for by a 10-year property tax, the one that just went through in 2025. It's a 10-year property tax of $1.50 per $100,000 of assessed value. So in Seattle, that's roughly like if you have a medium value home here, which is like $1 million, you're paying like $15, which is kind of a steal. You're getting $100 for paying $15. Or if you're a renter, you're not really paying any of it, I guess. It's free money.
And what are the participation rates? I don't know how many voters there are in Seattle, probably several 100,000. How many of them are voting in municipal elections, and then how many of them are turning in their democracy vouchers?
2023, participation in the program was about 5% of people who received the vouchers, which is way higher than most rates of participation in like contributions, which typically is like 2.5% in other cities. So it also breaks things down by candidate disbursements. So in 2023, the city ended up giving candidates like $2.4 million.
Okay. So, and that came from $2.4 million of the democracy voucher money, but it's only 5%. So 1 in 20 of the voters who got a democracy voucher decided, I'm going to actually go and give it to a candidate.
Yeah, it seems like the participation has really varied over the course of the program. Like it really had increased the first few elections after it was introduced and kind of hit a high watermark in 2021. I think it had something like close to 10% of participation, but it seemed like it backed down a little bit in 2023, which researchers think maybe was due to just political fatigue at the time, but hard to know.
Did you elect a mayor in 2023? Or only in
We did not in 2021.
Yeah.
So maybe participation
I bet if you look at 2025, it'll be higher again because you had a mayoral election.
So the city doesn't have the official 2025 election participation rates for the democracy vouchers. Like they haven't issued their usual annual report. But I did get to look at the contributions made to each of the campaigns of the 2 major candidates for mayor in 2025. And it was really interesting to see that the amount of contributions going to the winning candidate, Katie Wilson, 78% of that came from vouchers. Whereas for the incumbent who lost, about 41% of the contributions came from vouchers. So it really feels like, and this is something researchers say too, that the vouchers are kind of another form of having your voice heard, like being able to put your money towards someone is maybe also an indication of like who people are most excited about as well.
So you said a minute ago when you were talking about the participation rates that so in most cities that 2.5% of voters make contributions. Is that what you were saying? And that in Seattle in that low year of 2023 you had 5%, and in other years you've had as much as 10%. So it's doubled or more the number of people who are making contributions to political candidates.
Yeah, that's right. It seems like, based on what researchers have found so far, that it massively increases who is participating and just generally gives people more of an opportunity to contribute.
So you can answer this or not as you see fit. Did you give your democracy vouchers back?
I did.
You did. And like, if you asked your 3 best friends, did they give their democracy vouchers back?
I think they did, but probably because I pestered them. Like, I think it's one of those programs here that people know about generally, but it's one of those chores that people don't always get around to.
It's so weird, though, because it's not free money, because obviously you can't do anything with it. But it is this thing where it allows you to take an action for free. And yet I still think 10%, while it may be higher than 2.5%, is still a pretty low number.
Yeah. I mean, if you're comparing it to like the total number of voters, sure, like the absolute number is pretty low. But I mean, I think if you're comparing it to usual participation rates of contributions in any major city, it is very demonstrably helping people participate in a way they haven't before. Right. And it's like, we'll take any number of additional people who want to participate in our political system.
So if everyone decided to participate, would that bankrupt the city? Do they have a limit on it somehow?
There is a limit on it. So the amount that any candidate can receive is determined by the spending limit for the election cycle, which is like determined in when you are applying to get these democracy vouchers. Like, this is the total amount that you're able to receive. And you can only redeem up to that limit. So that's actually one pitfall of this program. So in 2017, 29% of vouchers were assigned to campaigns that ended up not being redeemed because they had already hit the cap.
I see. And the cap is there because they don't want the city to go bankrupt, or they don't think it's fair for, okay.
Essentially, yeah, they're like, this has to work some way. Like, essentially the levy that they've put on property taxes only raises like $3 or $4 million a year. And so they really can't go that far above that budget.
CityCast Pittsburgh is brought to you today by Allegheny County. The county is recruiting poll workers, such an important job for the May 19th primary election. Poll workers, also called election officers, help run voting locations, and they earn money, $150 to $175 for the day, plus paid training before Election Day. Training can be in person or online, and new poll workers must complete it before working on Election Day. To serve, you must be a registered voter here in Allegheny County and be able to work the full day on May 19th. Poll workers play an important role in ensuring a smooth, fair election, and they gain valuable experience interacting with voters and managing the election process. If you're interested in earning a little extra money and supporting your community, apply online at AlleghenyVotes.com. Learn more and submit your application at AlleghenyVotes.com today. Today's episode is brought to you by Steal Hers Social, presented by UPMC Magee Women's Hospital. Y'all know, if you listen to the show, I am a huge sports fan. I am always down to chat with women who love football, who love the Steelers, just because, first of all, y'all have such strong opinions and you make them heard in male-dominated spaces. So if you're looking for that kind of community, mark your calendars for Steal Hers Social on May 28th. It's taking place at, of course, Acrisure Stadium, and you'll get the chance to peek into the locker room and run through the player tunnel, get access to all these behind-the-scenes spaces. There's even a player meet and greet and an opportunity to hear from women in sports. They've got raffles, giveaways, face painting, bingo. If you like to get crafty, make sure you stop by that button and bracelet making station. The event is open to women and girls of all ages, and as a CityCast listener, you get a $5 discount on the $55 ticket. Use code CITY, C-I-T-Y, and buy your tickets now at universe.com/stealhers. That's steal, H-E-R-S. CityCast Pittsburgh is sponsored today by Window Nation. If you're a regular CityCast Pittsburgh listener, then you know we have been absolutely delighted by Pittsburgh spring. It is so nice to see the trees turn green, get that afternoon breeze. It's been such a long winter. But to really make the most of this season, you probably want some nice windows. Maybe yours gets stuck. Maybe they are starting to leak. Maybe you just want a refresh. Window Nation's running their The More You Buy, The More You Save sale, which could save you up to 50% off all the windows for your home, along with 0% financing for 5 years. When you buy with Window Nation, you get to pick from over 1,500 styles and colors. Dang. And they're all custom built. They come out to measure your windows so they fit right the first time, and the installation crews are truly professionals. The crew leaders have over a decade of experience, and the installation all happens in one day. And if anything does end up going wrong, you are protected with a lifetime warranty. So hurry, the sale ends soon. Schedule a fast, free consultation now at windownation.com.
I asked you this question. If you did this research, I'll be so shocked. But so how much money does a winning Seattle City Council candidate raise? And how much of that now comes from democracy vouchers?
Somewhere between 100 and 600K. Like, it really varies depending on the race, like what district they're in, like how contentious it is. Like, I know one of the races here where people really were going for one candidate really strongly. It seems like, that candidate, after they knew they had it in the bag, was just like, I don't need to raise that much money. But I did actually break down what percentage of contributions for each of these city council members' campaigns from 2025.
See who does her homework.
I did.
God.
I got deep into that city database to look at all of those numbers. And I honestly really had fun nerding out about this because I was curious, how that really played into our election. And it seems like for city council elections here, there was most of the funding actually came from the vouchers, which kind of makes sense. I don't know about you, David, but I wasn't really a person who was going to donate to a city council member, but having the free money means that it was way easier to do that. So of the winning candidates, one of the winning candidates, 88% of their funding came from the vouchers, another 85%, another one 61%. But she was running against someone who wasn't participating in the voucher system at all because she wanted to be able to take corporate money. But then she lost. So
if you take corporate money, you can't get the vouchers?
Well, if you want to take more than what the proposed limits are. So like I mentioned before, there are limits if you want to participate in the voucher program to how much your campaign can raise. And this one candidate didn't want to participate because of that. So
when I was doing my reading about this, it sounds like the democracy vouchers do a lot of interesting things, and we'll get to some of them in a second. But one thing they don't seem to do is actually change who donates demographically to elections, that it's still a whiter group, people who are heavy voters already. If anything, it's taken people who are politically active but may not have had the money to donate and made them into donors. But it's not like it's all of a sudden, now young voters are really participating in politics. It's actually older voters are more likely to give their vouchers back. So is it increasing participation in the way that I think the people who designed it hoped it would increase participation?
I think yes and no. What you say is true, that people who are older, whiter, wealthier, people who are already more likely to participate in contributing to a local election are more likely to return their democracy vouchers. But it seems like it's also the case that you are getting more people who are not part of those demographics who are participating as a result. So I read this great book called Democracy Vouchers and the Promise of Fairer Elections in Seattle.
I did read
a whole book about this. These two sociologists at Stony Brook University in Georgetown, they were the ones who did all of the research about this, and they wrote a great book about it. And they found that there are kind of three pillars of change that happened as a result of these democracy vouchers. So one is, did it change participation in elections, which is kind of your big question here. And essentially, yes. So if you look at a graph of the last 6 elections, the before and after is really stark. Just the sheer number of people contributing is much higher.
Yes.
And then it gets to this question of, is this representative of the broader population? And the answer is sort of. It's more representative than the usual system of contribution. So there are more people of color and more young people participating. But like you say, white, older, more affluent Seattleites are still more likely to participate. But participation, they found, is growing in these groups of, younger people of color. So overall, that's good news. And then the third pillar that they looked at was, did this renew the pool of participants in local elections? Like, are more people investing than before? And looking at it, it's so interesting to see like the number of people who make cash contributions is somewhere around like $8,000 to $10,000 before we introduced democracy vouchers. And that has increased by so much. So in 2021, close to 60,000 different people participated. So basically, it's like quadrupled or quintupled the number of people who are just making contributions in the first place.
But most of those contributions are from democracy vouchers.
Yes, the vast majority of them are from vouchers instead of cash. Although some people are now doing cash in addition to the vouchers, which I think is another rich area of study, but we don't have numbers on really.
A couple of other finicky details. So they're $25 increments. So you can't give 10 to one, 12 to another. It's you give 25, 50, 75, or 100.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
I will say that the hang up that I have sometimes about the $25 increments, because you've got, 4, you're like, I got to spend them wisely. Like sometimes I feel like I'm a kid where I have like 4 really good stickers and I'm like, well, like, where should I put them? Like, it's kind of permanent. Like, I got to make the right decision. And so I put off making a decision where like I'll give 2 of them away at the very beginning where I'm like, okay, I really want to put some money behind this primary candidate. But then I forget about the other 2 before they expire. So I think it is, it's kind of tricky sometimes to figure out how to distribute them the way that you want.
And I said in the introduction that I didn't know of any other jurisdictions in the U.S. that have this. Are there other jurisdictions that have this, as far as you know?
No. So the only one that has passed this is Oakland, California, which approved something similar in 2022, but it has been paused due to lack of funding. I don't think they're going to start it until at least next year, if they do it at all.
Yeah, and you do hear, and I think New York has this, the government matches, where
yes,
if I give $10, the government will match it, another 10 or 20. I think New York, it's an 8-to-1 match for some elections. But this is different. So let's go to the, your city could be better. Is your city better? So when political scientists look at the effect on the elections, you've identified some. There are more donors. But what are the other effects? Are there any other effects on elections? Do they have any effects on who wins, on who does well, on incumbency, on new kinds of candidates?
All of those things, actually. So it changes who is running in a lot of ways. So candidates have actually said that it's easier to run and that having these vouchers means that there's a lower barrier to entry. We also do know that it has been associated with more people of color and more women winning among candidates, and that the average age of people running went down from 55 to 47, which is not a huge change, but that's like a decade.
That's a huge change. I disagree. Huge. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's interesting that it's not only influencing, how voters are having their voices heard or, their money spent, but it's also kind of changing the incentive structure for candidates to run potentially.
Right. And your example of your mayoral race where you have a young woman, Katie Wilson's a youngish woman, right, who won that election over an incumbent.
Younger than the average, I guess. Yeah. She's like early 40s, I think.
Yeah. So. Okay. So, but not an old woman who won that and did it with 78% of her donations.
That's right. Yeah.
That's astonishing. So this is just for Seattle, for municipal elections. Would this be legal? Could the state do something like this? And could there be a federal version of this? Or would that be illegal if it were federal?
There was actually a 2017 legal case brought to county court alleging that our voucher system infringed on homeowners' First Amendment rights to use taxpayer dollars to fund speech they didn't support. And that actually got appealed to the Washington State Supreme Court, who ruled against the homeowners. They said that the precedent came from this 1976 case, Buckley versus Vallejo, which upheld the use of government funding of campaigns, including limits on spending by candidates who choose to accept government subsidies. So it's unclear, though, whether the U.S. Supreme Court would come to the same decision, though. So, there has actually been a similar program proposed at the federal level in 2018. So Ro Khanna, who is a California representative, introduced a Democracy Dollars Act and proposed that each voter gets federal election vouchers too. So $25 for the president, $15 for the Senate, and $10 for the House, but it didn't really go anywhere.
Interesting. How well known is this in Seattle? Obviously, you know about it because you're talking about it. But do you think is this something that people broadly care about, talk about, know about?
I think know about, I would guess most people at least know about it. As we talked about, participation is not super high. Like, I do think that people know about it and know that they maybe should be returning them in the same way that a lot of people feel like they should be voting. But our municipal elections often are in the 30 to 40% range. So it's not atypical for a city to not have, huge election turnout unless it's tied to a presidential election as well. It's not like a huge point of civic pride or anything, which I've always been surprised about because it's such a cool program and we're the only ones doing it.
Yeah. Are there any people who object? Are there any haters?
I have never heard of a hater, I will say. People taking free money and being able to give it to someone they like, it feels like...
It's not free money, Jane. It's your tax money.
Yes,
it's tax money.
Sure.
You're paying extra taxes to do
As
this.
a renter,
it feels like a higher rent.
It might be true. It might be true. It does feel like you're getting away with something a little bit if you're not a homeowner having to directly absorb those costs. But I have talked to a lot of people who know about them but have never used them, which I don't think is uncommon.
It is. I wonder why it hasn't really spread beyond Seattle. It's just like a genuinely interesting new idea. And as you say, if there's not a huge objection in Seattle, maybe if you did it in Detroit, people wouldn't object, or in Nashville, people wouldn't object.
Yeah, there have been other proposals in LA, Austin, Albuquerque, New Mexico. I think at the state level, New Hampshire and South Dakota have tried to pass something like that. Actually, South Dakota passed it, but then it was repealed by a Republican-controlled legislature and governor. So, it does seem like it's most popular in mid-sized cities that are run by Democrats. And, I kind of agree with you. I'm surprised that more people haven't tried this, but the only thing I can think of is incumbents have reason to dislike this. And I don't know. If you're already very comfortable and deeply entrenched in the political system in your city, then you're like, why would I want more democracy when things are already working pretty well for me? It's why shake up this whole thing? I've also heard the argument, of course, it takes time and effort to get this on the ballot. And then it also takes time and effort to actually administer the program. Right. Part of what our taxes are paying for are people to oversee this program, the logistics of sending them out. And it is extra effort, but, it doesn't seem like it would be impossible.
So what can your city could be better listeners take away from our conversation to make their city better?
I think thinking about any new way to increase political participation is an important part of democracy. And this in particular feels like it gives power back to the people in having their voices heard in what's otherwise a pretty convoluted process of campaigning, rather than letting corporations or organizations with money really dominate the conversation instead of letting the voice of the people be heard. So, whether that's democracy vouchers, which might be a bridge too far for some people, or even just, having a matching program for donations, it seems like those are both pretty low-hanging fruit for making sure more people participate in local elections.
That was so interesting, Jane. Now we're going to go to a little lighter topic. Our word on the street, second topic. So we're going to talk about the Seattle freeze. What is the Seattle freeze? Is it a real thing, or is it something people just say? Okay,
so I think people would describe the Seattle freeze as the idea of people being nice on the outside, but kind of icy on the inside. My prime example of the kind of phrase you would hear from someone giving you the Seattle freeze is, we should hang out sometime. But there's no follow through, no plan to actually hang out. A lot of people talk about this as just a general culture of passive aggression. And I don't know, some people point to the Scandinavian roots here as a reason, that being a part of more Scandi nations. But I'll hit you with a hot take, which is I don't think it's real. I think it's a fake thing. I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So when did it emerge? So when I remember, when I used to spend time in Seattle in the 90s, I'd never heard the phrase the Seattle Freeze, but now it seems like it's the rep.
Oh, interesting. I don't know about when the idea of it got more popular, but what you're saying actually gives me some fodder for my theory, which is that I think this happens anytime you bring together a strong contingent of locals with a lot of transplants. And if you were here in the 90s and you didn't hear much about it, I wonder if that's because the era of transplants was not as strong then. I feel like with the tech boom here, the 2000s and 2010s were really when a lot of people started moving to town. And I mean, I think this just is inevitable. Like when you have a group of people who are like deeply entrenched in the community, they grew up here, and then you've got a bunch of new people moving in, it just feels like a culture clash a little bit.
And so you think it's not really real? Do you think it would be true in any city where there's a lot of transients?
I see this in my hometown. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, which is not a place that has a name for this thing. But I've heard from a bunch of people who are new to town or like have moved there as adults saying that they found it really hard to get into a social circle in Louisville because a lot of people there end up hanging out with, who they went to college with or high school or even like middle school.
Right.
And it kind of makes sense. It's like, if you've already got your crew of people, no, we're not accepting new friends right now. But here, I think it just also becomes an easy crutch to avoid social interaction. Like, as you probably know, we have a reputation for the weather being very gray and rainy a lot of the year. I think it's just like getting easier and easier to disappear into like our online worlds rather than interacting in real life and just being like, ugh, it's too hard to make friends because of the Seattle Freeze.
Because of the Seattle Freeze, not because I'm not trying, not because I'm just sitting on my
hard.
ass.
Like, I get it. Like, I understand. But I think there's like a little element of maybe it is harder to break through people's exterior here. But I don't know. I'd say half of my friends here are transplants and half of them are people who grew up here. So I'm like, it can be done.
What's, I think, to me is so odd about this theory is that actually the people who are desperate to make friends are transplants. So I think where you get tension is when the native who is like, I don't need these people. They are annoying. All the prices are higher. Like, why is there another poke shop here? And like the natives are encountering the transients. But I would have thought the transients would be not Seattle freezing themselves at all. They'd all be like, I'm new in town. Let's hook up.
I think you see some of that, but then you also, I think, have some folks who are like, I'm new and this is just really hard. And I mean, to that, I say, yeah, it is hard. I think it takes a few years to build relationships anywhere you move. But here, because we've got this built-in thing you can point to, it's easier to point to that thing instead of just accepting that it's hard. Yeah.
I mean, D.C., where I live, is a city filled with transplants and with people who come in and out of it. And I actually think that especially when you're young and you move to D.C., it's pretty easy to plug into social circles for the reasons I just talked about, because everyone else is new. And so you're all in the same position. And so everyone's kind of joining up. Also, because I guess political careers are intrinsically more social careers than tech careers. A lot of people who go into tech careers are personality.
Well, you're like working from home too, I think is another big thing here, which is, a lot of people are not going into an office and meeting people organically. I mean, is there a word for that in DC? Like the clash between people who've been around for a long time and people who are just moving through? No, because I've been around for a long time. I grew up here, and we're just seen as irrelevant. Nobody cares about us. Everyone knows that it's a city where the transplants matter, and the locals we're interesting curiosities. Jane C. Hu, host of CityCast Seattle, thank you so much for coming on Your City Could Be Better and doing so much prep work. That was amazing. Thanks so much for having me, David. Listen to Jane every weekday on CityCast Seattle. That's all for today's episode of Your City Could Be Better. I am your host, David Plotz, and our producers this week were Lizzie Goldsmith, Elizabeth Kama, Priyanka Tilve, Jane C. Hu, and Ashley Smith. Our music is by Carl Christensen. If you are enjoying Your City Could Be Better, why not tell your friends, rate the show, and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back next week with another conversation about how your city could be better. Bye-bye.